you may ask why. Why do you spend so much money on so much staff? Why don't you just cut it down and work in an ensuite way, you know? So you put on a show and you let it run and you don't change it. So another way of working actually would be, it's actually quite an interesting question in the context of Schaubühne, because the building is not designed for repertoire theatre. Why choose a repertoire rather than an ensuite theatre? Any ideas?
But the repertoire is more diverse in a way. If we don't have one play that it's playing for 4 or 5 weeks and only that one play, but we have different things every night or 3 times a day, it's more diverse and it attracts different audiences and maybe it's fulfilling artistically.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have to keep them on a paycheck. You could hire them for a month, you know, like I don't know, on a temporary contract or whatever. But I think it also affects the type of plays you sort of, because you have to then choose something that is going to keep, you know.
Exactly. I think the key word is the flexibility. That if you have a repertoire system, you're much more flexible in your decisions, and you can make artistic decisions, and you don't have to decide when you take them up to the end what this means. You know, you can take more risks. Sometimes you have a play and you think this play is not very well known. You have an ensemble that is not very well known. But then you produce it and it turns out to be very successful, and then you can keep it in repertoire for years. Whereas when you decide, when you would make the decision from scratch, then you would need to decide how long this play would be running, and then it's gone. But it's a completely different way, and I think this is something very interesting, because I don't want to. I think that's 2 different models that we want to look at, and there's many different there's many advantages and many disadvantages, and I think we should look at that more closely, what those advantages and disadvantages are from a producing point of view. And usually our rehearsal periods vary from 8 to 12 weeks. That's an experience we have. 8 to 12 weeks is rather long, but because we're playing so much and because we're touring so much, a rehearsal period is always interrupted. So in reality, a 10 to 12 week period actually cuts down to maybe 7 to 8 weeks, and then it's not so much anymore. Because it's a repertoire system, the actors are constantly playing at night. That means rehearsals can only take place until 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Then they have to take a break to perform at night. That means rehearsals are reduced.
I was listening when you asked, is this repertoire way of managing the theater better or not? So I can't judge what is better, but in my opinion, in these modern times, when it's all it's about economy and how finance some product, I think it's a privilege, in a way, to have artistic reasons to run the theater in that manner?
I think you're right. Yes, I think you're right. Absolutely, absolutely.
But I have to say, I'm always confused when this sort of argument is pulled out, because theater is art. You know, like what other reasons are we going to have?
But theater is also business.
Yeah, I know.
Theater is also
I
business, I would say.
But, yes.
I mean, this is my.
Not only that. So I think it
and
has to be.
And when it's art, then it's privilege. When it's only art.
Yeah. I mean, I think it should always be a combination.
Yeah, I agree. But
What I'm in a way, I'm a businessman as a theater manager, of course. So I would always say yes, theater is business. Yes, it is business. I'm constantly looking at figures. I'm constantly looking at budgets. I'm constantly trying to figure out whether or not the budgets work, whether or not the plan can be fulfilled, or whether or not the plan has to be changed in order to make the budgets work. But I'm always saying that the business side serves the arts, and the arts determine the business. You know, it's a relationship. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't even say that this system is better than the other system, but I would say that this system determines a certain way of producing and determines the artistic choices a lot.
What's the percentage of the actors that are engaged on your repertoire?
We have 35 permanent actors in the ensemble, which is rather a large company. I mean, there's bigger theaters in Germany, like the Deutsches Theater in Berlin and other theaters. Burgtheater in Vienna has 60, the Deutsches Theater has 40, but 35 is a big ensemble. And our policy is to have no guest actors, because we believe that the ensemble is really a very important, builds the profile of a theater. But of course we do have guests anyway, because an ensemble is something that constantly changes. So our contracts with actors are always limited contracts, and if you work in a different way, if you make a cast for a particular production, you end up in huge scheduling issues on the one hand side, but also you're not able to develop this kind of theatrical language that you're able to develop with a permanent ensemble. So what we don't do is that our ensemble members are not allowed to play in a different theater in the city of Berlin.
Which makes sense.
And this is very important for us, because the actors make the profile.
And they're connected only to your theater.
And they must be connected to our theater. And if they change for good. Of course, sometimes it happens that they come to us, and then they have one or two productions at another theater. They still play, and then eventually it goes away. But they are not allowed to go back and forth to other theaters. And of course, some actors and by the way also directors, they like to do that. And we have had quite some quarrels, even, or at least discussions. Why shouldn't that be possible? And we were very strict in that. We said it's not possible. It actually undermines the idea of having different theaters with different profiles. We believe that if that happens more and more, at a certain point, the politicians will say, why do we need 5 big theaters in Berlin? They're doing all the same program, more or less, same directors, same actors, or why not just get rid of one? It's cheaper, and it's not much of a loss. But whereas if you have like 5 big theaters in Berlin, if they have very different profiles, you know, the Schaubühne having its profile, the Gorki Theater with a completely different profile of migration background, and then the Deutsches Theater and the Berliner Ensemble, then it justifies that you have these different theaters, and that they give the money for these different theaters. We were interested in writers who were, of course, I don't know, of course, who were related or who were writing about our society, our biographies, who were relating to our times in a political, socially engaged way, whatever that really means. And we believed, and we still believe, by the way, that a writer writing a play nowadays is the main artistic voice who reflects on our world.